fascination of life, the fascination of games, is the unknown result, not the known result.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the second part of making a city builder. And today will be all about roads and nodes. And specifically, we will implement the object node. That will be the first object to be placed within the room with some real x and y coordinates. And we will use a small sprite for this to give it a collision mask that will be used for distance calculations. And then we will also fill out the implementation of the object road. Roads will have start node and end node instead of these x and y's. And they will also be put into the road network instead of the lanes. Furthermore, we will draw the nodes and we will implement snapping, so you can snap to nodes.
And let's just jump right into it. So we will start by making our object node. And we will not give it anything right now, but we will then make our sprites. That's going to work as our collision mask. So it will just be a simple circle. There we go. Now we jump into our build road, where we create our start node and end node at the same places we created our lanes last time. There we go, end node as well. And we will of course replace the x and y coordinates. And then we will create our new road. So we will replace lanes with roads. And we will create our road and then put in all of our lanes into that road. So we will create two empty arrays that are called lanes and nodes. You see, I am pushing the forward and backwards lane into the new road that we're creating. And then I will also put in the nodes. Start node and end node. And let's try to see how this works so far. And as you can see, we're now creating two nodes. We can see the nodes, but we are no longer drawing the lanes that we wanted to do. And so we are going back into the GUI, the graphical user interface, where we will draw the road. So instead of for each lane, we will say for each road, or for each lane within that road, we will draw the lanes. So we'll just access the road's lanes and draw that. And then of course we need to add our roads to the road network again, because we removed it before. So we'll just have to push it back into the array. And as you can see here, now we are drawing the roads. Not perfectly, but we're getting there. So let's just quickly change up the white lane. And there was just some simple differences in the code setting the colors. So we'll just fix that real quick. And now you can see it looks so much better. You can see the nodes are a little bit offset. So we'll quickly change the origin of the sprite to be in the center. There we go. And now it looks pretty perfect, in my opinion.
Alright, so the next step will be to draw the nodes in a more pretty fashion than just those small circles. So we'll make them into larger dark gray circles that match the road. And we'll simply copy this code and say, instead of for each lane, we say for each node within the road, we draw a circle. So you see I'm just replacing all the lane with node. And then changing the code from drawing a line to drawing a circle. And let's have a look. So here you can see now we are drawing the nodes. They are a little bit big, in my opinion. So we'll just change up the radius. And we'll also move it up so that it is drawn behind the roads instead of in front of. So yeah, just change it to 24 instead of 32. And that looks a lot better in my opinion. And now it's time to implement snapping. And we will define some variables within the graphical user interface. First one being temp node, then closest node to mouse. And then we will also make a snapping threshold. We will set that to 48. And now in the step event, we will define the closest to mouse node. And so we will start by saying if we have any nodes at all in the world. One thing I realized is that instead of saying instance number is larger than 1 or 2, I could also just have used the function instance exists. But it's essentially the same. We simply say instance nearest, we use this function, and this is one of the reasons why we have made the collision mask for the node. And then we simply say if there are no nodes, then the closest node is undefined to -1. And now it's time to implement the actual snapping. So we'll say if we have a closest node, and if that node is closer than the snapping threshold that we defined, then we are starting some sort of snapping event. So we will save our closest node, because that's the node we're going to snap to, in that temp node we defined earlier. We will also define a boolean, it's called isSnapping. And just to make it clear, I'm going to change it up a fair bit. So you can see already now I'm doing the end node, because there's snapping for end node and snapping for start node. And I'm figuring it out as I go along a little bit here. But as you can see, I'm trying to say how am I going to push those nodes into the array of the rows. And so I'm just gonna let myself cook here. And as you can see, I encountered some error. And I'm just fiddling around right now, changing the scope, you might say, of where things are defined in the code. And here's our first attempt of doing the snapping. And it's kind of hard to see if it actually works here or not. There are a few examples that indicate whether or not they work. You can see here that the node is not connected to the road itself. So we will address this. And it's important to note that I am changing the isSnapping to isSnapping end. And that is because there are two different scenarios. That is where you start off from an existing node or you end in an existing node. And essentially you can also do both. This implementation will also accommodate for that. And I found a pretty clever way of addressing this is simply replacing the end node that we defined earlier. So instead of creating a new node, we just take the temporary node in. And then we will replace our start and end coordinates by these start and end nodes. I realized that this implementation made it far easier to handle. As you can see here, we are actually doing some cool snapping now. And now that the end node snapping has been implemented, it's time to implement the start snapping. So when you start the road from an existing node. And we will address this in a similar way, but also with some specific changes. So we will define a new temporary node, which is specifically made for this start node snapping. We will do the same trick again, where we replace the start node by the temporary node. And as you can see here, we are actually snapping from the beginning as well. So this is really cool. And now it is time to show that now we are snapping. And so we will go into the draw event of the graphical user interface. And then we will say if there is a node that we can snap to, we will draw a white circle on top of that node. And we will do the same for the start snapping.
And you can see we have some issues here because I forgot to clear the memory of resetting our temporary variables. So we'll just do that real quick by setting everything back to -1 at the end of the function. And as you can see here, now we can snap to nodes and from nodes. One problem is that we cannot see the white circle when we are going to snap to in the end snapping. And we will fix this by doing something a little bit dirty, by taking out the function from the clicking event and taking it out into the step event. And the result is that you are asking twice in the same step function what the current action is. And this is something that I will most likely address in the next video, where we will clean up and finish the roads. But as you can see here, we are getting pretty close to the final product for today. We have implemented snapping. We have implemented the object road as a collection of lanes. And we have implemented nodes as in a real network where there are nodes and edges. So the roads are the edges, and the nodes are the nodes. Yeah. And as you can see, it works really well. Now, thank you so much for watching today. It was a pleasure making this video. It was a lot of hard work, and I tried to change the format a little bit today. Maybe you noticed. So please let me know if there's anything good or bad about this format. I tried to make it a little bit more smooth. And yeah, thank you so much for participating today, and I will see you next time.